Morning, everybody, and welcome to the May monthly briefing. I said May. I can hardly believe it's already May, but here we are, and we're so excited to have you all on the call today. My name is Thomas Deere. I'm the Vice President of Sales Engagement here at the Chamber, and it's my privilege to be your host for this incredible event. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and on behalf of the Chamber team, I want to take a moment to express our gratitude to all of you for your dedication and contributions that you're making to this totally incredible and amazing region. I also want to thank our sponsor, Medical Mutual. Their continued support of the monthly member briefings is incredible. If you don't know, Medical Mutual is our health insurance benefit partner. I tell you what, they can't be beat. From the sole proprietor to the large company, MMO has the solution tailored to fit your needs. If you have any questions about getting a quote or understanding a little bit or demystifying health insurance, please let me know. We'll put you in touch with somebody. They'll be able to walk you through that process. Today, you've joined in listen-only mode with your microphones and camera muted, but we really want this to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions throughout the call and share your thoughts using the Zoom chat box. I got to tell you, we have an incredible lineup today. I'm so excited to hear from former University of North Dakota alumni Connie Pillich. By the way, that's where I went to graduate school as well, and the dynamic duo of Tegan Travato and Maggie Gow from Bright Arrow. So let's dive into it. It's my pleasure now to welcome Brendan Cull, the President and CEO of the Cincinnati Regional Chamber. Brendan, take it away.
Morning, Thomas. I did not expect so much North Dakota this morning, but it is great to hear it and great to see folks making a connection this morning. I'm really excited to have Prosecutor Connie Pillich on as our guest today as part of the monthly member briefing. As is our tradition, I'll give a couple of opening comments. We're going to turn it over to the prosecutor for her keynote remarks, and then we'll have a few question and answers. So if you're interested in asking Connie Pillich a question, you can do that in the Q&A. Thanks again for being here today. Just a couple of highlights about some things that are happening in our community and what's important. Tuesday, believe it or not, is a primary day. It's an election day. And there's not a ton of things on the ballot, but that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't make an effort to go vote. If you live in the city of Cincinnati, the mayoral primary is on the ballot on Tuesday. There are 3 candidates running to be in the general election for mayor. That election, again, happens on Tuesday. The top 2 vote getters will advance to the general election in the fall. And so that's an important race. And if you're interested in it and you live in the city of Cincinnati, you should make an effort to go vote. Secondly, Ohio Issue 2 is on the ballot. This is a bond issue that allows the state to float bonds to focus on important infrastructure projects like stormwater and roads and bridges and other key parts of our state's infrastructure. The chamber has endorsed this ballot issue. We do endorse ballot issues. We don't endorse candidates, but we endorse ballot issues. We did that 10 years ago when this was on the ballot. So we would encourage you to go be supportive of that. Learn more about it online. And you'll see an email from me today with some links about that as well, too. Importantly, you could vote at the Board of Elections if you choose to be there today, because today there is a very special celebration at the Hamilton County Board of Elections in Norwood, which, as many of you know, is about a block from the Norwood Lateral, which today at 1 o'clock is being renamed the Bridget Kelly Norwood Lateral. Many of you know Bridget Kelly, who was our clerk of courts in Hamilton County, served on Norwood City Council, and as a state representative was a dear and close friend of mine before she passed away last year. Bridget Kelly was a wonderful public servant and an even more wonderful friend. I'm so excited that this naming is happening and the state of Ohio, especially Catherine Ingram, worked to get this done. So today at 1 o'clock, Commissioner Driehaus and others are leading a celebration in support of the renaming, which is happening today, of the Bridget Kelly Lateral. So that'll be really exciting. And you'll see lots of people wearing green. I do know that. Other exciting stuff this weekend, the piggies will be out. It is Flying Pig Marathon weekend. If you want to think about one of the events that defines our community, it is the Flying Pig Marathon. We produce a lot of events at the Chamber. We had a very successful Asian Food Fest just last weekend. It was tremendous, 60 different booths. You know that we do Oktoberfest, and Taste of Cincinnati is just around the corner, and also Blink. But in that pantheon of events that really define who we are as a community, I think about the Flying Pig Marathon. And so there will be tens of thousands of runners this weekend, whether you're doing a 1 mile or a 5K or a relay or the half or the full. It's going to be a really spectacular weekend in Cincinnati. It might be a little damp, but don't let that dampen your spirits. The best part about this race is that people from all over Cincinnati come out and cheer on the runners with noisemakers and sound and bands, and just that kind of support to the group who is running is really absolutely tremendous. I mentioned Asian Food Fest. I just want to give a big shout out to the team at Asianati and the team at the Chamber. That collaborative production effort, the Chamber leads this event from a production standpoint. My colleagues, Chelsea York and Rob Weidel and Tim Clark just did an absolutely incredible job delivering the event this weekend. There's a whole group of us at the Chamber from our marketing team and our finance team and production team who helped deliver that. It was really, really spectacular. 3 blocks, 60 plus restaurants, a great display of the cultural vibrancy that exists in this community. And then finally, we are rounding third and heading home in the Arts Wave campaign, which is chaired by former Cincinnati Regional Chamber Chair Mel Gravely. Mel was the founder and CEO of Triversity Construction. Mel's successor in that organization, Jim Watkins, is our current board chair of the Cincinnati Chamber. Mel has been leading the Cincinnati Arts Wave campaign for the last several months. They are on track and have done an unbelievable job. But many companies right now are still in the midst of their campaigns. So if you're in the midst of your Arts Wave campaign, or even if you don't do an Arts Wave campaign, you can still donate by going to the Arts Wave website. The Chamber is in the middle of our Arts Wave campaign. I can tell you that today is the final day of it. It concludes with yours truly sitting in a dunk tank at the Chamber offices. So if anybody feels like they would love to see me drop into a giant bowl of water, come by around 3 o'clock today at the Cincinnati Chamber. But you have to make a donation to ArtsWave, or you can just make a donation from your computer and then imagine me getting dunked into the water. So anyway, it should be a great fun. I'm grateful to our team for pulling that off. All right, now it is time for our keynote. I am so excited to welcome Connie Pillich as our keynote speaker today. She is the brand new Hamilton County Prosecutor. You may have seen some really great news stories over the last few days about celebrating her 100 days in office. She is the first woman ever elected as county prosecutor in Hamilton County, and she's the first Democrat elected county prosecutor in 92 years. Her career began in the military, and you heard me talking earlier about a North Dakota connection with her and Thomas. She had 8 years on active duty. She obtained her MBA and was awarded the Air Force Commendation Medal 3 times. She graduated from the University of Cincinnati College of Law. I know she lived in Clifton for a while. We talked about that at one point. She became a public defender, handling felonies. In her private practice, she fought off predatory lenders and stood up to criminals who preyed on the poor and defenseless, including appearing before the Ohio Supreme Court. She was elected to the Ohio legislature 3 times starting in 2008, and ran in a I always point this out when I think about having known Connie for so long. She ran in a district that was a very close district, hard fought district, is if I get that right. I think one time it was just a very small number of votes that Connie won by 500 votes.
Oh, 5.
Five votes. Wow, 5 votes. Okay, so we're going to talk about that for sure. But the reason I bring that up is because I think anybody who runs in a district that is 50-50 cannot get by just talking to one party or the other. And I think that's such an instructive lesson in politics. You have to talk to everybody. And running in those three districts, I think, was really defining for Connie in her political philosophy and how she chooses to approach work governing for all. And so I'm excited about that background, and I hope she shares some about that. She's always been active in her community. She's volunteered for the Hyde Park Neighborhood Council, United Cerebral Palsy, Planned Parenthood, Cincinnati Now, the Jewish Early Learning Center, Kennedy Heights Montessori Center, and the Greater Sycamore Soccer Association. She and her husband live in Montgomery. They have two adult children, Kayla and how do I say it? Talon? Kayla and Talon. They live in Columbus and that other city in Michigan, respectively. Buckeye fans to the end. Connie, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Thank you. And thank you everyone for welcoming me here today. It's a great pleasure for me to talk to you and tell you a little bit more about my background, talk about how the office of the prosecuting attorney is set up, as well as my goals for this first year in office. Let's go to the next slide. I think Tom has control. So I do want to tell you a little bit about my story. I love this photo of me on the right. This is when I was an ROTC instructor, and those are my cadets. They went to their field training up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and we were having a good day that day. It was a lot of fun. But military, starting my life in the military was not something that I expected to do as a young girl. I didn't live in a military town. My dad was never in the military. I grew up in Buffalo, in a suburb right next to Bethlehem Steel. So the dad of everybody I knew worked in the steel plant. And we remember if we were driving into the city, we drive right through Lackawanna and we could smell the steel plant. It stunk. And if we went to the beach, we could see the orange water from all the slug that the steel plant dumped into Lake Erie. It was a different time, so we're all grateful to, strangely, Richard Nixon for cleaning that up. But the idea of going into the military really happened when I was in high school. Now, my parents wanted all five of us to go to college. They didn't have any money for anybody, let alone me, number five. But my sister and I were watching TV one evening, and a commercial for Army ROTC came on. And I was sort of a jock in high school. And my sister turned to me and said, "Hey, Connie, you ought to do that. You'd be good at that." And so the idea was born. So I applied for scholarships with the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. I never heard from the Army, but both the Navy and the Air Force made me a finalist. So I had to go through an interview process. And my interview with the Navy was in downtown Buffalo. And of course, the night before, we got 2 feet of snow. So my sister and I shoveled out the driveway, and she drove me to downtown, dropped me off right in front of the building. And I went in, and there were these 2 old, gruff Navy guys. They must have been 30 years old. But to me, as a 17-year-old, that was really old. And I don't remember much about the interview except for the one question that has always stuck in my mind. And it was, don't you think there'd be social problems if women served on ships? Let's just say they didn't like my answer, and I never heard from them again. So that was my experience with the Navy, but my Air Force interview went much better, and I was given a scholarship. So when I graduated, I got my commission the same day, and I went off into the wild blue yonder, very secure in my belief that the Air Force was going to show me the world. And right away, I got to go to Biloxi, Mississippi. So that was where I had my technical training. And right after that, I went to Grand Forks, North Dakota. And let me tell you, driving from Biloxi, Mississippi to Grand Forks, I bet nobody here has been in both of those places, but Biloxi's right on the Gulf, and it's got an elevation of like 22 feet. So my sister came with me to help me with the drive, and we drove north and north and north and north. Stopped in Buffalo to visit my parents, and then we headed around north and north and north and north and north. I felt like I was going to fall off the edge of the world because our country's just that vast. So I get to Grand Forks, and it was a beautiful day. It was a Friday after Labor Day, I think. So beautiful September evening, and the sun was getting low, and there were kids out playing in the front yards. It was gorgeous. We found a good dinner. The next morning, it was 40 degrees, and that was about it for the year. So, one of the fun facts about living in North Dakota is that you have to plug your car in the winter. And that's just to keep that so that your engine doesn't freeze. And that way you can start it. That was an eye opener for me. But my job in Grand Forks was fascinating to me. I was the chief of the combat crew communications security branch because our combat crews were airborne tankers, B-52 bombers, and of course, intercontinental ballistic missiles. So my job was to make sure that they could communicate securely using the codes that we had, as well as at the right times and places on their journey, particularly for the air crews. So it was a fascinating job. But when you're talking about nuclear war and you're 23 years old, you really, well, for me, that was really where I understood the weight of my responsibility as an Air Force officer. When I looked into the military, my only dream was I wanted to get my education, and I liked the idea of wearing the uniform of my country. But it didn't occur to me as a 17-year-old applicant how serious it really was. But that was a good experience for me because that taught me a lot about responsibility and public service. One of the benefits for me in Grand Forks was getting my MBA at the University of North Dakota. And that helped me a lot in my leadership, as well as some of the work I did at my next assignment, which was the coolest assignment I had. It was in West Berlin. Yes, West Berlin. So back then, the wall was still up. We were the occupying army. Our allies were the British, the French, and the Soviets. And that was very interesting because you couldn't find a more clear example of where East meets West, or the gravity of our national security posture. My best assignment, however, was right here in Cincinnati. I was sent to the University of Cincinnati to be the ROTC recruiting officer there on campus. And 2 days after I moved here, I went out for a run. I had an apartment in Clifton. I went out for a run in Clifton, and I ran into my husband and the entire Clifton Track Club, which has now evolved into the Greater Cincinnati Running Club. But if I hadn't come here, if I hadn't turned left out of my apartment to go for a run, I would not have met him. But luckily I did. And being a part of the running community, that opened up a whole community of local people for me to get to know and for me to have friends with. And I'm still friends with those people today. I don't run anymore, but some of them still do. One of them's running the pig on Sunday. So about 6-7 months after we got married, I was coming out of the women's meeting at church, and I got mugged. It was dark out. The guy just ran around the corner of the church and dragged me down the street. I got pretty roughed up. It was pretty traumatic. I had a miscarriage from that, so that was pretty hard. The police responded. My friends called the police, and they were very, very good to me. They called my husband. They drove my car home because I was not in a condition to drive. But that opened up another chapter in my life where I decided I wanted to be of service to women and girls in Cincinnati, so that A, they wouldn't get mugged like I did, B, they didn't have to lose a child like I did, and C, they could feel safe on the streets and know that there's someone for them to help them through it. And so that launched a lot of different things for me. It gave me the inkling of that I might go to law school as part of it. But what I did in my community was my women's group. We lobbied the city to institute a mandatory arrest policy for domestic violence calls. Our our idea, because we barely had domestic violence laws at the time, because this is probably before Maggie was born. So, and Tegan. Anyway, but the idea was to separate the parties so no one was killed, and because then your tempers could cool. And in the very first year that the city had that, partner deaths went down by 85%. So we felt very good about that. The other thing that I felt was noteworthy was our efforts to get the legislature to require insurance to cover mammograms. And I think it was our own Jackie O'Brien, who was a state rep from Cincinnati at the time, who sponsored that legislation. And we were very happy to do that. Little did I know at the time that I might serve in the legislature later. That never entered my mind. But um, it just cemented my belief that service is in my blood. So I did go to law school at UC. I did clerk for a local firm and ended up uh, starting my first real job after law school was with Clodfelter and Gutzwiller, a small plaintiff's bar firm. We all took felony assignments from the public defender's office. That's how we paid our rent. And then our work to protect people's jobs and to fight off predatory lenders. That was our main bread and butter. After 7 years there, I opened my own firm with another woman, and I was the managing partner for 7 years. We were small. I think at our peak, we had 6 lawyers and 8 staff. So we were small, independent, but it was really great work. And I got to tell you, I loved working for myself. I worked every day, but I loved working for myself. And of course, the picture at the bottom is my State House service. You can see I have a little Air Force pin and miniature of the ribbons and medals that I earned on active duty. Let's go to the next slide. So now that you know a pretty extended version of my story, I know it took a long time to tell, but that just is a testament to how old I am. So I've had a lot of chances, a lot of years to do a lot of things. But right now I'm your prosecutor, and I got elected in November, and my first day was January 6th, which was a snow day for everyone. The courthouse was closed, and so I closed our office. So I didn't get to meet my staff until the next day on the 7th. Obviously, the prosecutor's office prosecutes criminals, and we're also the legal representative for the elected officials to county-wide offices, as well as all the county agencies like JFS and MSD and so forth. I just want to tell you a little bit about how the office is structured, and talk about what kind of cases we do and my first challenge. So I'll probably do the caseload the last. So we have 200 employees, or at least we're funded for 200 employees. 8 of those are support staff. They're all civil servants. And then 120 of those are attorneys who serve at the pleasure of the prosecutor. We handle between 6,000 and 8,000 felonies a year, over 30,000 misdemeanors. Felonies, of course, are more serious crimes, and you can go to state prison as opposed to the local county jail. A misdemeanor is a less serious crime. Most of that, about 2/3 of that, is traffic stuff. But we have some more serious things like simple assaults, domestic violence, DUI, possession of drug paraphernalia, things like that. So we do over 30,000 of those each year. My very first challenge was staffing. As I said, the prosecutors serve at the pleasure of the prosecuting attorney. And when in November I was working with the office on the transition, and I emailed the entire office and asked everybody to fill out a little Google form if they wanted to stay. Well, 32 people did not fill out that little Google form. So I was losing 32 lawyers right on the spot. And then there are 3 additional that I asked to leave. So that put us about a quarter of our attorney population was going to leave before my first day. So I spent a lot of time in December trying to fill those positions. And frankly, we didn't miss a beat. We were able to appear in all 30 criminal courtrooms on day one. We also had a sufficient number to handle our requirements in front of the grand jury, as well as juvenile court and the Court of Appeals. Now, we were thin, we were spread thin, but we were able to do that. And if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so and this is where I want to talk about how we haven't missed a beat. So we ran some statistics, and I'm still learning all the things that our software can do, but comparing at the top in that graphic, the percentage of cases, this is all about the grand jury. And of all the cases we're sending to the grand jury, the grand jury convicts, or pardon me, indicts 61.1%. Some as felonies, 11.7% as misdemeanors, and 27% get ignored. And you can see, looking at the last 2 years, that it's very, very close. It's basically on par with how things were run in the last couple of years. So I'm really pleased with that. And as far as juvenile crime, that's of course a topic that everybody wants to talk about. But we are, and that's a difficult place for our lawyers to be too, because they're usually on the younger side. And we do have a good division chief of our juvenile division. She's giving them training once a week. They try to improve their trial skills. But we are partnering with community groups too. I mean, I know my job's in the courthouse, but I want to be part of the solution community-wide to try to keep kids from going down the wrong path in the first place. And for our victims advocates, we are really working on strengthening that program, giving opportunities for our victim advocates to get additional training. We recognize their contributions during Victim of Crimes Week, and we're working on getting a facility dog to help them, to help the witnesses who are coming to talk about what happened to them in front of the grand jury, so that they can be more comfortable. Of course, I couldn't be doing any of this if I didn't have a stellar leadership team. I brought in 5 lawyers as my leadership team, and Heidi Rosales, who 4 of them started their careers in this office, and that has been enormously helpful. Heidi Rosales is my first assistant. She's my chief operating officer, and I have 4 terrific other chiefs with them. So we are up and running, and I'd like to next talk to you on the next slide, talk to you about my goals for this year. We're trying to transform this office into something that's terrific and has an important role in our community. So I do have 5 goals. I want to train our lawyers, update our internal policies, audit our work, double down on ethics, and improve technology. Now, training the lawyers is critical. You know, I'm military. First of all, I like structure, but I know that training is number one for anything. And you get a young person who comes right out of law school, they pass the bar, allegedly they're perfectly qualified to do everything. But we know in law school, you basically learn to read. You learn to read and think. But the actual technical parts of practicing in the courtroom, knowing how to admit evidence, knowing how to do a motion to suppress, those types of technical things, they've got to be taught that. And there was no training program here. The only thing the closest thing I could find was what I mentioned before in our juvenile division. But what about where our lawyers start in municipal court, where we have 30,000 cases a year? So I decided to create a training program. That's what I campaigned on. And I selected as my training officer, 49-year veteran of this office, Steve Tolbert, and he is on it. We started our program last month, in March, that's 2 months ago now. We started our program in March, and it's really making a huge difference. But we also, as far as our moving on to number two, updating our internal policies, what we did in our criminal division is we restructured so that we have not just team leaders, but we have some floaters who can come in and help in any courtroom for anything. They can help a lawyer who needs another person at a murder trial. They can help a lawyer who needs some advice on jury selection. So they're there to help in any courtroom. And that's been very helpful. We've seen a lot of, that's been very helpful because our lawyers talk to me. But one of the big internal policies that I changed was our parental leave policy. Several years ago, there was no parental leave policy, at least according to the women who had their children 7 years ago. But when I got here, there was one. It was 4 weeks. And if both parents of paid leave, and if both parents worked here, they didn't each get 4 weeks. They had to split that 4 weeks between the two of them. And there was also a limit on how many children you could have. They limited your family size to 2, and you couldn't have Irish twins. And there was no birth recovery time for birth mothers. So I got rid of all that bad stuff. And I mean, who am I to tell people they can only have 2 children, or how they space their children's birth? And sometimes you don't have a choice. Mother Nature just does what she wants to do. So we now have a very competitive parental leave policy. Birth mothers do get 4 weeks paid for physical recovery from birth, and then each parent can have 8 weeks of paid leave. And this course runs concurrently with FMLA time that the federal government offers. We changed our promotion system. No longer are you promoted based on time and service. Now it's based on merit, and it's a competitive process. Okay, so that's some big things. And look, we have to have these internal policies that make this a good workplace, because I can't compete with the pay that a big law firm will give these lawyers. I got to give them county pay, public service pay, but I can give them these benefits to give them a better work-life balance, and that's how I can attract top talent. As for number 3, auditing our work, we're still in the process of putting that together. It is my vision to have that set up by the end of the year. We're going to have to look for some grants to help us fund that, but we need to go back and look at our work, not just at the conclusion of a trial, but to give feedback to the trial attorney so they can do better, but also to make sure that we didn't commit any misconduct. This office was criticized a lot in 2024, I think it was, where the press highlighted many instances of misconduct, and I want to make sure we don't do that anymore, because it's horrible to get a conviction and then 20 years later some misconduct surfaces and the conviction is reversed. How am I supposed to protect the community when that happens? With our ethics, we're going to have an ethics program designed on the same model that the U.S. Attorney's Office has been using for years. I've done my research with them, and I haven't selected my ethics officer, but our lawyers need a safe place to go to get some unbiased legal advice when they have an ethical dilemma on a case. And it could be all kinds of things, problems with the judge, the attorney. It could be any number of things. And then finally, we want to improve technology. We just got rid of Windows 10 in January, okay? So we need to have great technology, state-of-the-art technology that allows us to do our cases better and faster, and make sure we don't fail to disclose any important evidence to the defense. So I think we go to the last slide, right? Thank you. So I hope you got a little bit of an education about how I got here and the experiences that shaped my work ethic, as well as what the office looks like and some of the challenges we have, and get an idea for some of the goals we have. I hope we can meet all of them this year. Thanks for the time to talk.
Connie, thank you so much. I should call you Madam Prosecutor. Madam Prosecutor, thank you so much.
Call me Connie.
I appreciate it very much. A great overview of your story and what's happening in the prosecutor's office. To those online, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A. I'll happily ask a few. You did a great job kind of overviewing what you're doing with the office and your approach a little bit. You've already had to deal with some, higher profile crime issues in your first 100 and some days in office. I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about juvenile activities downtown and how you can be a partner with police and businesses. Can you talk a little bit about how you've thought a little bit about how you want to engage there in those conversations with stakeholders who are interested?
Yeah, so last year, many of us saw the security video of those youths who were mugging and beating people up, stealing their property, etc. And I believe those were on Government Square. And so the city and the 3CDC partnered to try to do something about it. And they gave a grant to, I think it was the Urban League who organized this, to put some men on Government Square. Just some guys, grown-up men. And their job was to be there between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. because that's when the school buses come and they drop the kids off. The kids are standing around waiting for the bus to take them back home, take them home. And whenever you get a bunch of teenagers between the ages of 14 and 18 around, where they're teenagers, okay? And a lot of these kids come from troubled homes or troubled neighborhoods, and fights were breaking out. So what these men did is they started interacting with the kids, getting to know them, asking about their day, handing out bags of potato chips and other snacks, things like that. And so I went down there about a month after they started. So this was probably sometime in March of 2024, because I wanted to see what was going on. And what I saw was that these men had developed these relationships. Boys would come up and give them a hug, shake hands, and they'd tell them about what happened that day. And the men knew these kids, they knew their names, they knew what issues they were concerned about. And so while they were telling me, the men were telling me a little bit about this, all of a sudden, all 6 of them turned around and walked that way. And I had no idea what was going on, but what had happened was a bunch of the kids had lined up like they were going to watch a fight. And the guys walked over there and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And everything dissipated. The kids dispersed, they went off into their little cliques. And that was phenomenal. So I met with Iris Rowley yesterday, who was the person who organized this. And they've been keeping track of the data. And the incidents are down 50% overall. And arrests, I can't remember the number of arrests, but that's down much more than 50%. And it's because these guys are keeping things from escalating. And so it's, I asked the guys, what would you do in a perfect world if you didn't have a very stingy budget? And they said, there are 10 neighborhoods we're focused on. And if we'd like to put 5 men on the streets in each of those neighborhoods between the hours of 3 and 9 p.m., because there's nothing for these kids to do. And if these men are just around and they're willing to stand outside, they do it on Government Square on hot, cold, rain, shine. If we could have that, it could make a big difference. Just having an adult show up on a regular basis, that's not new. That's been since I was a new mother learning about being a mom. I learned that too. Having an adult who can just show up and be there. That can make a difference. So I hope we can do more of that. I would like to I'd like to see this continue. I'd like to see us partner with the business community to try to find ways to make other streets safe.
And I've also seen you, go so far as to make sure that, that conversation about prevention and activity is really important. But I've also seen you, you know, willing to use the full force of the law if necessary, if a crime is committed, to make sure that people understand that, the worst kind of actions do have consequences. I know that's been some
Yeah.
of your
And
philosophy as well.
that's one of the most difficult things of this job. I mean, one of them, there's others, but seeing a child whose criminal activities have escalated, and we're trying to give them the services they need to not go that way, but you can't reach every kid. And unfortunately, their crimes escalate and they get more serious. And we look at binding them over to adult court. And that's really hard to see a life wasted like that.
Appreciate that. I know that every day we wake up, you're a county leader. Every day we wake up lately and are reading news about county negotiations with the Bengals, and there will be future follow negotiations, presumably with the Reds, as they look at those two stadia that we have in Cincinnati that are so important to our economic and cultural vibrancy here in Cincinnati. A lot of those conversations lead with the county commissioners, but you are also the lawyer for the county. And so as an elected official, the elected attorney for the county, you have a role to play in those conversations as well, too. And I've heard that, seen some other interviews where you've started to talk about that. I know you can't speak about any of the negotiations in specific, but could you broadly talk about your philosophy and your thought as to your role in that process and what you hope to see happen with your leadership in that process?
Well, thanks. And as I mentioned in my talk, I am the legal counsel for the county, for the county commissioners in their official capacity. And of course, I mean, my name's on the door, but I got
Sure.
100, almost 120 lawyers. We're almost fully staffed again. So I have assigned Roger Friedman to be the chief of this. He's been in this office for, 45 years maybe. He's got a lot of experience with the Bengals negotiations from all the years ago. He was not lead counsel, but he is now. My chief of the civil division, Steve Simon, is also a part of it because this is such a big deal for the county and for the taxpayers. But we did something different this year. We did decide to bring in a national expert on stadia. He has negotiated deals across the country, and he knows the market. He knows how deals are structured. He's a finance guy. That's his talent. He's not a lawyer, but he's a finance guy, and he knows how cities across the country have managed to figure out how to pay for these important assets that they have. And so he's going to be our golden ticket for working through the negotiations. And look, it's going to be a lot of work for us, but I'm excited to have such a great asset. His name is David Abrams, by the way. He's with I think his firm is Inner Circle, and I think that's going to be really key to a successful negotiation.
So fair to say you're staying close to the process.
Yeah, it's definitely newsworthy. We all remember the first lease that we're still suffering under, and we need to do better by the people.
I think the approach that understanding how valuable the Bengals and the Reds are to our community and what they provide, not just from a civic perspective, but in particular to just bringing attention and enthusiasm to our city. I remember what it was like for the first time living here when they were in their Super Bowl run, the Bengals, and just how much energy and excitement it brought to the community. And you recognize what a value it is to have professionals, 2 professional, 3 professional, 4 professional sports organizations in Cincinnati. Even our Reds, Bengals, FC Cincinnati, the tennis tournament in many ways is a huge driver of economic vibrancy. So I appreciate that you're seeing that. We are right up on time. And so I am so grateful that you spent time with us today. And that you are in the office and doing all the work that you're doing. I've been, as I've said in a couple of other venues, I have been so pleased about your willingness to engage and take calls and answer questions and be just accessible to this community. And I think it's been a great start. So thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope we see you again, and we know we will at various different chamber events. If you need anything from anyone here in this business community, please don't ever hesitate to call.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, terrific insight. We're so fortunate to have you protecting the entire region, and we thank you, and we appreciate all you do for us. Thank you so much for your time today. It's my pleasure to introduce Tegan Travato, CEO, and Maggie Gao, the COO of Bright Arrow. Bright Arrow is an elite executive and leadership team coaching firm that helps new and seasoned executive deliver unparalleled business outcomes. In a world where coaching is becoming increasingly digitized, their growth is fueled by clients who value their custom approach that leverages businesses' challenges as the catalyst for accelerating professional growth. For those leaders on the call that are not unlocking their organization's full potential, you're in for a treat. Welcome, Tegan and Maggie.
Thank you for having us, Thomas.
I have a couple questions for you. First of all, we talked about some questions before, but I got one on my own. What sets Bright Arrow Coaching apart from other coaching organizations in the industry?
Go ahead, Maggie.
I'm just going to jump in. So first, we are proudly women-owned, so we want to celebrate that. We know that's important across this region as we celebrate various angles of diversity. And the other thing I want to talk about is that we have focused really primarily on senior leaders and C-suite leaders throughout the 10 years that Bright Arrow has been in business. And more than that, we've grown from a solopreneurship started by Tegan into a team of 20 coaches. And that's so valuable to organizations to be able to put senior and C-suite leaders in touch with coaches that are top level. So we draw from across the nation in terms of who our coaches are so that we can really grab that elite talent, and coaches that have been executives themselves. So a lot of our clients really appreciate the fact that our coaches can speak the language of executives and of the C-suite. So that's really important to us. And then another way that is really beneficial to organizations is in the ability for an organization to say, we want to provide coaching for, 10 executives across our organization. So we have a bench of coaches, a bench of talent that we can place cross-functionally, cross-divisionally, and then aggregate data across the organization to make sure that all of those leaders are moving forward in a cohesive way in the development of that organization.
Great. Perfect. It seems like for the last, I don't know how many years, there's been a lot of uncertainty in the world. What do you believe is the most critical role an executive team plays inside their organization?
There's 3 viewpoints I would take on this. I think the first is the ability to present a calm and unified front. And we counsel our clients that can't happen until they have met behind closed doors and had all the tough conversations and agreed to what they will go out into their communities and say and do and align on. That doesn't mean they all agree all the time, but to really build confidence in the organization during uncertainty, they have to first lock arms behind closed doors. And we're privy and proud to keep counsel through those conversations. The second is their ability to create clarity in that ambiguity. So that is harder than ever full transparency. You know,
Agreed.
sometimes the clarity executives need to create is that we don't have all the answers. And so I think that's the third piece, is being able to create safety across the organization by being appropriately transparent that we don't have all the answers right now. When we watch executives try to dance through tough conversations to position themselves as if they are super confident about what's ahead, they lose trust. But you know, we've inherited this belief from previous generations that that's our job, is just to make everyone believe we've got all the answers. We're in a new paradigm of executive leadership now, where we actually build trust with our organizations, our stakeholders, and our boards by saying, here's what we know for sure. And here are 2 or 3 things we are gambling on intelligently that we don't have all the answers for. And that is actually a kind of a new muscle and skill set we're having to work with senior leaders to build.
Yeah, it seems like honesty. It's all right to say, I'm not sure, we're working on that.
Yes.
Can you share some ideas?
It is.
Can one of you walk me through how I think businesses too often are reactive? You see it every day. Can you walk us through how maybe there a proactive scenario planning that can help executives navigate through the unknown? And why do so few teams do it?
Well, it's uncomfortable. I mean, that's the
That's
short
true.
answer. And I think, I mean, this is true. We're hearing this from a lot of executives right now, that things are shifting so quickly in a geopolitical landscape that it's hard for them to even know. You know, we used to project 5 years out, 2 years out. Right now, it feels like it's day by day. And so I think that it feels like, you know, just waiting to see what happens might be the best use of energy. But the reality is that when we look at a lot of these organizations that we work with, they do have the ability to take a look at some of the scenarios they already know may occur, look at the data that they do have in hand, and then assess that out into different scenarios. So if you need to raise rates or increase prices on something, and you know that you already have a certain base of clients that can't afford that, well, you can model that out. You can create a predictive model for that. What is that going to look like for you, and how do you respond to that? And so that would be an example of a way that a team could sit down together and go, what are 5 different scenarios that could happen this next year? And then what would be the plan if we do them? Now, in the end, the plan may end up being, or the scenario may end up being different than what you imagined. But imagine coming to that scenario with a few variances rather than you haven't prepared at all. And so the other thing that's important is, in that discomfort, is to keep in mind that the goal of scenario planning is not to live in fear every day, that all of these things are going to happen. The worst case is going to happen across the board. The goal of scenario planning is to run the models, create some predictive analysis, and then put it back in the drawer, to put it away for a moment, and then you have it when it's ready. And I do think, you know, to Tegan's point earlier about honesty and authenticity on the part of leaders, is being able to say to your employees, we've run some scenarios, we don't have all the answers, but we'll be prepared to respond to that if it happens.
Makes sense. You know, leaders, great leaders, they don't have all the answers. So how can they, and I think a lot of businesses are probably going through this at this time, how can they leverage their teams, or maybe even look at different structures to lead more effectively during uncertain times, or even in good times?
Yeah. The first I want to say, you know, just last night I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about how many more CEOs are heading for the exit. CEOs in their 40s and 50s are opting out because of the amount of ambiguity, volatility, the taxation on their health and their wellness and their families. So I want to frame my answer in that fact. So I think the way executives and how we're counseling our own clients have to lead through this is to, first of all, think about how they delegate more into the next level of leadership. And it is most executive C-suite leaders' inclination to keep things at the top as a way to protect people, not as a land grab, not because they want it all, not egoically, but because they go into protection mode when they know their people are uncomfortable. And so we have to really press our executive teams to like put some of that down into the org and remember that that is the next level of leadership's growth opportunity. So by keeping everything up in the C-suite or up at the senior leadership level, we're actually strangulating the growth of the next level of leaders who are eager to help when times are hard. So we would really encourage executives to think about how to delegate into the next layer of teams. The other piece is to use a team of teams model. So we will help our leaders set this up. Actually, this is a military callback for anyone who was on our earlier call. The team of teams model encourages businesses to think about what's this new novel problem at hand. Perhaps it's something temporary we have to solve. Pull together temporary teams that could be subsets of different leaders to tackle that problem in a time-bound capacity. And once they have done that, they can pass their learning on to other leaders across the business, dissolve the teams, and move back into the normal state of affairs. So what that prevents organizations from doing during high peak times of growth or change is pulling the business back and forth between priorities. We can keep our business as usual priorities going, and alongside that, we run these temporary leadership teams to tackle novel or urgent problems. And the final piece, which brings me back to that loneliness factor for the C-suite, is that by working with teams, working in teams, working across other functions and layers of leadership, we help combat that loneliness we feel. So strengthening that collaboration really improves problem solving, but it also makes us feel at home in our jobs. We know from Gallup that leaders feel more lonely than ever. And we know from working, helping organizations set up new teaming habits that when they start to lean into teamwork and collaboration more and not being so autonomous with their responsibility to deliver alone, they start to love their work again and they start to feel like they have real friends and camaraderie across the organization. So it's interesting. We don't go to the market, with our services and say, hey, we're going to bust loneliness with our team coaching. But the truth is that is one of the side effects that we see of the team coaching model and executives working within their teams more rather than in silos.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you so much. And for everybody in the chat, my colleague Paige has put their website up for Bright Arrow Coaching. It's just www.brightarrowcoaching.com. So if you have any other questions, or if you need to get a hold of Tegan or Maggie, please reach out to me here at the chamber and I'll make sure we make that introduction for you. Tegan and Maggie, thank you so much for your passion, your leadership. We look forward to growing with you and Bright Arrow in the future.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Quickly, I just have a little housekeeping. The Center for Research and Data, led by my colleague Brandon Rudd, has been making major impact in our region. Not only do they produce that highly sought after annual State of the Region report, which has become a must have and it sits on the desk of many leaders in the Cincinnati region, but they've also produced economic reports on a variety of topics. These include the regional impact of the arts, the Bengals Super Bowl run, Findlay Market, Blink, and even Taylor Swift's visit here, her impact on our region. Brendan and his team are now measuring the economic impact of opening day in Cincinnati, which is like none other. It's the greatest opening day in Major League Baseball, and it should be the first game every year. If you could please take a moment to scan the QR code on your screen. The survey takes just a little bit of time, but it's so important to our region and gives us such great feedback, and we look forward to sharing that with you. While we leave that slide up, I'm going to talk just a little bit more. The show, we're blessed with so many amazing leaders in the region. You saw today with Connie, with Tegan, with Maggie, with Brendan, just so many great leaders that care about the region, care about the people in the region. And it just reminds me every month what a treat this call is. Quick reminder, there's the copy of the monthly member briefing is curated on our website for further viewing. I see somebody logged in and said, hey, we got on late. We'd like to see the rest of it. Give us 24 hours. It'll be up on our website and you can listen to it in its entirety. I do want you to mark your calendars for join. June 5th for our featured keynote speaker will be Larry Crowder, the new CEO of the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport. We look forward to hearing from Larry and all the great thing he's doing. As we know, Candace McGraw passed him the baton and Larry's out there running. So we look forward to spending some time with him and finding out all the great things that are happening at our wonderful regional airport, CVG. So I'm signing off. I'm going to leave the screen up here a little bit. Please use the QR code and fill out that survey. It would help us so much, and we look forward to sharing those results with you. Make May a great month. It's the first. We have the whole month ahead of us. We look forward to seeing you at one of our events, and hopefully we'll see you for sure at Taste of Cincinnati. Thank you, everybody.